Welcome, everybody. Monday, July 1st. John Aravosis here. Hello, all. How are we today? Woo woo. Quebec Day? Didn't know. We know Bastille Day. We know that. Anyway, welcome, everybody. How are you all? As always, adjusting camera. Maybe a little bit left. Good enough. Good enough. Hello, TikTok YouTubers. Let me get TikTok rolling. Boom. Boom. Come on. There we go. Woo. Ulm. Hang on here, mirror my video. Boom. There we go. All right, TikTok is rolling. My glasses are ready. My water is ready. Oh, I hit the Greek goat by accident. That was kind of funny. The Greek goat is ready. Anyway, hey, TikTokers. There we go. Nummy water, nummy ice water. Anyway, hello all. How are we doing today? Today was a glorious day in DC. Well, politically not so much, but weather-wise, at least, we had a nice, unusually cool day. Thank you, Alan, for the hearts. Anyway, oh my God. Still adjusting my, there we go. That's a little better. Adjusting my camera. Anyway, hey, buddy. Hey, Martin. Thank you for the gift. Ice cold root beer. I know we talked about root beer before. I have to add, I'm going to do that actually. Add some root beer to my, hey, Siri, add root beer to my Harris Teeter list. Not doing it. Never mind. I tried. Oh, well. Hey, Jorge. In the middle of the show, it may not like me adding things to my list. Thank you, Mark, for the gift. Anyway, hey, guys. So how are we doing? Today's Monday. Hello, all. July 1st. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Ava, Jetta. Lots of gifts today on TikTok. Thank you, guys. Hey, Lai. But, yeah, busy day politically, America, with a huge Supreme Court decision. So elections in France yesterday, those were scary too. Thank you, Ava, user 336, Nicolate, appreciate the gift. Dora, lots of gifts today. Thank you, TikTokers. I know, glass mugs for the freezer. That's not a bad idea, actually. The little ones you freeze. I had those years ago and we never kept them. You know what I mean? Thank you, Marcy. So yeah, welcome back, everybody. Today is July 1st, I am John Aravosis. This is my daily show I do. We hang out. We talk about the latest news from Ukraine. We also talk about the latest news otherwise. We're going to talk a little bit about the French elections today. We're going to talk a little bit to start the show about the big Supreme Court decision today. That was a huge victory for Donald Trump. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Mustard. Not so much victory for democracy. And then some Ukraine news. There was an attempted coup in Ukraine, which I didn't even hear that one until today. Yep. Thank you, Binova. It's my Uniqlo shirt. I'm very happy with my Uniqlo shirt. Thank you, Nick Dono, for subscribing, or if somebody bought you the gift subscription. Speaking of which, guys, remember, if you like the show and you've been following me for a while, please do consider becoming a monthly subscriber. You can subscribe on TikTok. I think there's just a subscription button or something on TikTok. On YouTube, same thing. It's somewhere. Charles, thank you. It's basically a way of contributing every month, which can be very helpful. So thank you for that. All right. So here we go. A little bit scary here. Anyway, hey, Annie. So let's get rolling. Thank you, Charles. Thank you guys for the gifts. Please do keep the gifts coming, by the way. That's the other way of supporting my work. I do this full time. I do it for free. And the way I'm able to support doing this is because of your guys' gifts. So please keep them coming. All right. Let's get rolling here. Donald Trump won a huge immunity decision in the Supreme Court today. I'm going to sort of go through it with you. Honestly, it's going to take me some time to figure this out. It was a hugely long decision. I think as the day went on, it started to, the legal experts, thank you, Rock, started to better understand what it was. I will say this was a decision by the Supreme Court, the U.S. top court, to try to determine to what degree can former presidents be prosecuted for crimes. Now, it's a very legit legal issue, right? On its face, the perfect example of why this decision needs to be made, like we need to decide when can you and can't you prosecute a former president, is Donald Trump for two reasons. One, indicted on 85 crimes, 85 felonies. God knows he's guilty of many of them. Thank you, Alan, for subscribing on YouTube. Thank you, Super Hornet, for the gift. So you've got people like Trump, who was one of our most corrupt presidents and one of our most corrupt former presidents as well. And you got to decide, okay, how do you know what he did when he was president? Was he doing it as president? Was he doing it as a private citizen? In the law, we like to sort of take the most extreme example, okay? And for example, Trump is president. He goes on the street. He sees some woman and gets angry at her because she says, "I hate you, Donald Trump," and he kills her. Is that an official act? Probably not, right? He didn't do it as part of his job as president. But that's an easy one, or potentially an easy one. Gets a little more complicated. Trump picks up the phone, calls his vice president and says, "Hey, Mr. Vice President, I'd like to talk to you about stealing the election. We've got January 6th coming up. It's a day where the Congress has to certify the election. I'd like you to help me steal the election that day by doing a number of illegal things that day." Is Trump talking to his vice president part of his job? Yes, right? Is talking about the election part of his job? Maybe. Is talking about stealing the election illegally part of his job? Probably not. Well, this is where you've got to, anyway, court had to make a decision there. The second issue I would throw before I get into the details is you've also got a different problem with Trump being corrupt. Thank you, Bjorn. Trump is corrupt, and therefore we have to decide when can a corrupt president be prosecuted, okay? The second problem becomes, how do you stop a corrupt president from prosecuting his political rivals? Because that's the other side of the coin here. When you make somebody like Trump president, thank you, Alexi, you run the risk of him being so corrupt that he will go after his political rivals. Trump has said repeatedly that he wants to go after Joe Biden, that he wants to basically appoint a special prosecutor or whatever to try to throw Biden in jail simply because Trump doesn't like Biden, right? Trump always goes after people he doesn't like. Well, you want court decisions that restrain wannabe dictators like Donald Trump from going after their political rivals. So you could argue that we want some restrictions on a president's power to go after former presidents, right? Because of Donald Trump being as bad as he is in terms of not supporting democracy. So in terms of what this decision did, what the decision did basically is it said the president has absolute immunity, or Trump has absolute immunity, or any president does, for official acts committed that are core to his job as president. So it's a little confusing, right? It's got to be A, an official act, and B, an act that was core to his job as president, that you get absolute immunity. Then you get immunity more generally, or the presumption of immunity for other official acts, but acts that may not be core to your job as president. Who decides? Who decides what acts are official acts? What acts are core official acts, right? Whether or not they get this immunity or this absolute immunity. That would be courts. Well, the Supreme Court didn't make it very clear to the courts how to make that decision. They also didn't make clear, can a state court make that decision? Because now we've got, for example, Georgia, the state of Georgia. State of Georgia is going after Trump. Trump tried to steal, one of the ways Trump tried to steal our national election, thank you, Ellie, is and thank you, Bjorn, for the gifts. Just looking here, PC Knowles, I'm looking for a few gifts I may have mixed here. Arunas, Colin, thank you guys. One of the ways Trump tried to steal the election is he went to the state of Georgia and he tried to strong arm state election officials into coming up with like 11,700 illegal fake votes for him. He basically told the guy, I need you to come up with 11,700, I think it was like 753, some exact number, of votes for me so that he can flip the state. And it was very clear he wanted the guy to lie and steal the election. The guy himself, this is a Republican official, even said, Trump wanted me to steal the election for him. He wanted me to break the law. Thank you, John S. The problem is, can a state, I'll stop in a second here because I don't want to get too legal. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I don't want to get too legal for you guys. Thank you, Nicolate. Thank you, Adventures. You've got the state of Georgia that's prosecuting Trump for trying to steal the election in Georgia, right? The federal election running for president, the results in Georgia. Thank you, Succeed. A state court has to interpret this Supreme Court ruling, thank you, Cyril, and decide. A state court is going to decide what is and isn't an official act of the president. That's a little weird. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you'd think, thank you, Courtney, thank you, Hans. That's the kind of thing that you'd think might be more appropriate for a federal court to decide, not a state court, because in our federal system, thank you, Lise, thank you, Hans, right? I mean, federal courts should be deciding on the limits or whatever of the power of the presidency, not a state court. State courts deal with governors. Anyway, this is a mess, guys. Thank you, Chazek. It's a total mess. People are very concerned. I mean, they're extremely concerned about Trump. They're extremely concerned about our democracy. It is not clear, as I said, some of the dissent, which are the justices that disagreed with this. It was the three liberal justices that disagreed, the three conservative six conservative justices that made this law. Thank you, Francis. what the liberal justices are afraid of is, how will we even know what is allowed, right? Can Trump assassinate someone? Who knows? It's a mess. It's a real mess. And it's unfortunately what we have seen. It really is kind of scary, actually, because if this can happen in America, forget it for the rest of the world, right? I mean, I think at least as Americans, we kind of thought, I've told you guys this before, we kind of thought our system of government was a little more advanced. I will say this, I'm telling you guys the truth here as far as how Americans perceive things vis-a-vis Europe. We looked at Europe and we always thought, Europe, you've got that crazy fascist parties and you've got the crazy communist parties. Our politics has always been a little more in the middle, a little more sane. You guys would say conservative, right? But our politics have always been a little bit less wide of a spread. And historically, we have not had to deal with the fascism and some of the crazy lefty stuff that you guys have had to deal with. Well, guess what? I mean, and I think it made some of us think that maybe our country was different, that maybe our country was a little more advanced in terms of not going to the political extremes, maybe a little more advanced in terms of the maturity of our democracy. Well, guess what? We were wrong. We were wrong. We're not more advanced. The really scary part with our democracy is that we've now learned that much of our democracy is based on, I sort of like to use the word comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y. Basically, it means like a gentleman's agreement. Thank you, Jen. And thank you, Karuna. It means that we sort of all agree to follow the rules in politics, especially the president. We found out that president is immune from committing a lot of crimes, is what today showed us, in the last couple of years showed us. The only way to go after him is the Congress, to impeach him. Thank you, Josh. But if the Congress is run by his own party, then, and thank you, Elizabeth, then his own party isn't going to impeach him, and nobody can go after the president in that case, right? Trump is pretty much immune from a lot of his crimes and has been for the last several years because his party was in power. And with his party, I mean, and that's kind of a scary concept because as Americans, we don't really think of the fact that a president can, or anybody can commit crimes as long as his political party is in power. That's banana republic stuff. That's like, that's Orban in Hungary, or it's Putin in Russia stuff. It's not the kind of stuff we think about with America. Anyway, very disturbing. I'm going to move on with the other news, but this decision is pretty freaky. It's just, I mean, there's a lot more I sort of have on it, but I'm not even going to get into it. It's just very freaky. French elections, the other area of really bad news. So yesterday was the French elections, French parliamentary elections, round one. Thank you, Cracker, for the gift, and Family Lavery. Round one of the elections. The French elections are taking place in two parts. Thank you, Fred. Part one was yesterday. Part two is, I believe, next weekend. A little confusing. France is actually super confusing. As an American, it's hard enough to understand how we elect our leaders, but understanding European countries is really confusing. Thank you, Cyril. Even more confusing in France. And it's funny, I studied in France. I lived in France. I read up on it again today. It still confuses the hell out of me. But bottom line is the parliamentary elections are today for the Congress in France, so to speak. Thank you, Boji. Thank you, Family Lavery. For the Congress, for the parliament in France. And even though it is not an election to pick a leader, okay, the leader of France is President Macron, who's going to be leader till I think 2027, something like that. So it's not to pick the leader, but it is to pick the parliament. And based on who runs the parliament, there are some very important jobs like prime minister, but prime minister doesn't really mean what it sounds like in France. President is the big job in France. Now, in many countries, prime minister, like in the UK, prime minister is the top guy, right? In France, it's the president. But you can still become prime minister in other jobs that give you a lot of sway. So bottom line is, the crazy party won in France yesterday. It's the former fascist party, less fascist today than they were before. I mean, I guess, yay. It's a party founded by, among others, former Nazi collaborators. These are not good people. Back in the 1980s, when I certainly became very familiar with, thank you, Lise, thank you, Maddie. When I became very familiar with the French right-wing party, because I was living in France, they were called the National Front. They were a fascist party. I mean, they were anti-immigration, but they were anti-immigration in a very fascist way. Thank you, Maddie. They've tried to rein in their fascism a bit, which is great. Traditionally, they've been very close to Russia in a very creepy monetary way. Thank you, Rock. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Lise, for the gifts. The Russians even helped finance this French political party. I mean, really, and by the way, I mean, thank you, Vicky. You know what it means when the Russians help finance political parties in Europe. I mean, right? I mean, it's not good news. Let's put it that way. And it's never innocent either. So that's really creepy. These guys won yesterday. Now, they won the first of 2 votes. It's a 2-round vote, so they take like the top candidates and they've got to go again next weekend. At least the initial analysis, thank you, Vicky, is that it was bad. The far right did very well. I mean, I've got sort of the breakdown. I can read to you if it means anything. Let me see here. The National Rally Party, they call themselves. It's the wannabe fascist, formerly fascist party, and its allies won about 33% of the vote. The New Popular Front, a broad alliance of left-wing parties, got 28%. So the bad guys got 33%, the left got 28%, and Macron's own party got 20%. Now, in principle, that's good because it's 48% to 30 or to 33, right? So 48% of everybody else versus 33 of the bad guys. And of course, there's other parties in there too to reach 100. The concern is that the bad guys did better than people thought they would. The people thought the bad guys were going to do better, but they didn't think they were going to do this well. So there's a lot of concern as to what happens next. Now, we'll find out next weekend, right? In terms of the next election, I will say this. I saw one sort of counterintuitive or countervailing analysis online this weekend, yesterday, that was saying that maybe this is a good thing because if the bad guys in France, if the far right didn't do as well, Macron, the current people, would keep control with a coalition of the parliament, and it would set the bad guys up to win the presidency in 3 years, when the French president, and the presidency is the big job. That basically they would be in opposition and the people leading the country would be Macron, his party, his coalition, and people are already unhappy. It would set the bad guys up to win the presidency. The hope is, by some people I was reading, thank you, Marie, is that if the bad guys, if the wannabe, I should not even the wannabe, the used to be fascists are able to take control of the parliament, it gives them some power in government, but not maybe enough. But it does give them enough that they start to get into trouble, that they start doing things that people don't like. But it doesn't give them so much that they run the country because they won't have the presidency, right? So it's kind of like controlling Congress to a degree, but not controlling the White House, right? Once you control Congress, you start to have some say, and you no longer are totally an outsider. You're responsible. So I did see one analysis that thought it was actually better to have it go this way because the far right will now get some power and possibly it won't go so well over the next 6 years, or I should say 3 years. Anyway, scary stuff. Thank you, Narco. Again, these are European political parties. It's unique. Each country is unique. Very confusing stuff. Like I said, I lived in France and I still find this stuff terribly confusing. So, all right. Anyway, who's it up to me, Santiago? I love questions like this. Who's it up to you to decide who are the bad guys, not the French people? Well, the German people put Hitler into power in 1933. Yeah, that's what I thought. No comment from Santiago on that one. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Rudas. I think good people should actually take positions and stand up to bad guys. But that's me. This is a show about Ukraine. It's about good people standing up to bad guys, right? I also have been an activist most of my life on civil rights and other issues. I don't believe we should let, a woman's getting attacked on the corner. I actually think you should do something. We were driving by in a car this weekend, going to a sort of an antique thing yesterday morning. There was a guy passed out or dead at a bus stop. He was literally on the ground under the seat at the bus stop, not moving. People are literally stepping over this guy to get their bus. Okay. I called 911 because there's a guy that could be dying or could be dead. No one was calling 911 to come check the guy. No one. That's me. That's what I do. I think good people intervene. Good people take a position. Good people don't sit there in 1933 and say, that Hitler guy who we just put as chancellor, he seems a bit extreme, but who are we to judge? So, yeah, I judge. And I'm very happy to judge. And I think Donald Trump, who are we to judge the will of the American people? If they want to put a fascist in power who's committed 85 felonies, who tried to violently overthrow the election, who are we to criticize? Well, there you go. All right. Telegraph. So this was a wild story. Thank you, Nicholas. The Telegraph reports that Ukraine security services foiled a coup attempt yesterday in Ukraine. Of course, it was Russian, instigated. They said the plotters planned to use the cover of a rally in central Kyiv to incite riots and then capture the Ukrainian parliament. Doesn't that sound familiar? January 6th. Hello, MAGA Republicans. Capture the Ukrainian parliament. The perpetrators planned to announce the removal from power of the current military political leadership of Ukraine, in other words, Zelensky. They then hoped to seize the building of Ukraine's parliament and block its work, again, January 6th. The coup was planned for Ukraine's Constitution Day on June 30th. So it would have been actually 1 day, 2 days, 30 September, April, June, and November. It would have been yesterday. Yeah. Ukraine crisis. Oh, so the Russians today kind of dissed Donald Trump, which I thought was kind of fun. Thank you, Jamie, for the rose. Keep the gifts coming, guys, please. Remember, I do this show full time. I do it for free. Your gifts are what pay the bills and keep it going. So please keep them coming. Subscriptions are also very welcome. Mods, maybe tell people how to subscribe. I always forget how to tell them. The Russians kind of dissed Trump, which I thought was kind of funny. Thank you, Francis, for either subscribing or somebody subscribing for Francis for a gift. Thank you, Jane. So the Russian UN ambassador, United Nations ambassador, gets asked about Trump's peace plan. Trump says he's gonna solve the Ukraine war in 1 day. As soon as he wins the presidency, even before the election, before he becomes president, he's going to stop the war in 1 day. Think of it. Well, the Russians said, I don't think so, which I think is actually kind of funny. The Russian UN ambassador said the Ukrainian crisis cannot be solved in 1 day. UN Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia told a news conference to mark the beginning of Russia's presidency of the UN Security Council. That'll be lovely. So Russia's going to run the UN Security Council this month, which will be a lot of fun. But I just thought it was kind of interesting that Trump's been running around saying, I will get my friends, the Russians, to stop the war immediately. And the Russians are going, no, you won't, which is, again, funny. Let's see how Trump reacts. Another funny story, actually, this one's actually a very good story. So Washington Post, very respected paper here in the States, gets its hand on some Russian military documents detailing just how bad the Russians are at bombing their own cities, because apparently it's been happening a lot. Thank you, Mimi, for the orange. Oh, that's very cute for the orange. Very timely. We know anecdotally that the Russians keep bombing their cities because we've talked about it, especially Belgorod in eastern Ukraine. I should say right across eastern Ukraine. So Belgorod's right across the border here from Kharkiv, right here. And pick up one of my mailers. We know that that the Russians keep bombing Belgorod, their own city. And the question is why? Well, Washington Post did a look at this. They got a copy of a Russian document. Looks like it's a Russian military or Russian intelligence document detailing the 38 times that Russia bombed itself during the war in Ukraine. A lot of the times they're using glide bombs, which is interesting because the glide bombs are the bombs Russia's been using quite effectively to bomb northeastern Ukraine, causing a lot of damage. I mean, a lot of civilians killed. They're targeting civilians. We knew that anyway. But causing a lot of damage there. And well, let me just read you this from the Washington Post. I think it's pretty funny. And honestly, always good news, right? If the Russians are screwing up in this war. So Russia's devastating glide bombs keep falling on its own territory, is the headline of the Washington Post. Internal Russian documents show how often its glide bombs hit its own territory, likely due to faulty guidance systems. At least 38 of the bombs, which have been credited with helping drive Russia's recent territorial advances in eastern Ukraine, crashed into the Belgorod region on the border with Ukraine between April 2023 and April 2024. In other words, the last year. According to intelligence documents, or a document received by the Washington Post via Ukrainian intelligence. The glide bombs are roughly comparable to the more advanced American JDAM guided bombs, except that our bombs, of course, don't go off course and kill our own citizens. According to the document, at least 4 bombs fell on the city of Belgorod itself, a regional hub with a population of 400,000 people. An additional 7 bombs were found in the surrounding suburbs. The most, 11 bombs, fell in a border region where some could not be recovered because, quote, of the difficult operational situation. An independent Russian media outlet called Astra verified many of the incidents in the document, matched those it had collected from local officials. So that's good too, that basically an independent Russian media outlet was able to confirm that a lot of the data in this report matched data it already had from local officials about bombings when Russia bombed itself. So it looks like the document is correct. While the bombs usually fail to detonate, which is also kind of funny too, like it's bad enough Russia's bombing itself, but they're also like the bombs aren't even going off. Not that you want the bombs to go off when you bomb yourself, but if the bombs aren't going off, it also kind of says like, what is wrong with you? A, you're bombing yourself, and B, the bombs don't even work. Kind of a bad thing. Actually, you know what I was going to do? I was going to start this segment with a joke and say, so 2 Russians walk into a bar, they get bombed, but by themselves. They get bombed by themselves. Anyway, it was going to be a bomb joke. Get it? Oh, maybe the joke bombed. Huh. All right. While the bombs usually fail to detonate, one of the first recorded hitting Belgorod, the town across the Ukrainian border, according to the Washington Post, in April 2023, it did explode when it crashed into a normally busy street, creating a crater 65 feet wide, shattering windows, and get this, hurtling parked cars onto the roofs of nearby buildings. The explosion was so big, it caused a crater that was 65 feet or around 20 meters, okay? And threw parked cars onto the roofs of the nearby buildings was how big this damn bomb was that went off in the city. I mean, they could have killed a lot of people. Any case, I just had to tell you that story because it kind of made me laugh. And I thought, it pisses off the trolls and we get a kick out of the Russians being so inept that they bombed themselves 38 times in the last year. But any case, another story worthy of hardy har 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 is not only do we have the Russians threatening nuclear war, and as I've told you before, every time the Russians threaten nuclear war, it's worthy of a drink because it's bullshit. It's the Russians just bluffing. It's what they do. They try to scare you. The Russians bluff about nuclear war. Thank you, Lorraine, for the gift. Simply because they want to scare you. They want to convince you not to help Ukraine. So they, we're going to use nukes. Look out, right? Because the Russians aren't doing well. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Lorraine. They're not doing well. And the way to do better in this war is basically convince us to stop giving Ukraine money. So we now have the Belarusian government, which I thought was hilarious here. So the government of Belarus is a dictatorship, horrible dictatorship, right next to Russia, right next to Ukraine. Thank you, Ellie. It's right up here. So Russia is over here and goes way up and over. Belarus is over here. So Belarus is this dictatorship that has helped Russia in the war. And the Belarusian dictator has been, again, helping Putin a lot. Well, the chief of the general staff, so the military head of the military, right? Not the defense minister, but the actual the general in charge of the Belarusian military. Thank you, Lavery, for the gift. Says that this was great. The country would use tactical nuclear weapons in any case where its sovereignty or independence was threatened. The Belarusians are threatening to use nukes if there's any threat to their sovereignty. Couple problems here. One, Belarus doesn't have any nukes. They don't have any tactical. They don't have any nukes at all. How is Belarus going to use nuclear weapons if anybody threatens their sovereignty? Right? They're talking about Russia's nuclear weapons. They're talking about Russian nuclear weapons that allegedly were moved onto Belarusian territory. Now, we did see indications of them preparing for it. Who knows, right? Maybe Putin did move some nukes onto Belarus. Maybe he didn't. Who knows? They lie, right? But the Belarusians are saying that, I mean, literally, this is the mouse that roared, guys. Thank you, Numenon. Thank you, Hawk. The Belarusians are saying, oh boy, if we feel threatened, we're going to use nukes that don't even belong to us, but belong to Russia. Do you think in a million years, Putin is going to let some Belarusian dictator general use Russian nuclear weapons when the dictator general wants to use them? Really? Thank you, Hawk. Thank you, Lars. There is a 0% chance that the Belarusians have any say at all in when Russian weapons get used, for the very simple reason that if a Russian nuclear weapon goes off, Russia's the one that's going to get attacked. Thank you, Hawk. There is no way Russia's going to go, well, I know we nuked you with one of our weapons, but it was the Belarusians. We didn't do it. Bullshit, right? A Russian nukes get used and Russia's getting blamed for it. That's why I'm laughing. That's why I'm telling you this, because this is just bullshit. Now, there was a second story that I thought was interesting because I was trying to figure out, why is Belarus making these stupid threats about nuking us, right? Or nuking Ukraine. There's a story today, Ukraine denies it, that Ukraine is building up troops along the Belarusian border, or building up at least the border area. I have no idea if this is true. putting troops up there wouldn't make a lot of sense because Ukraine needs the troops in the rest of Ukraine. Because again, remember, Belarus is up here. So this would be like Ukraine putting troops up here. Well, why would Ukraine want troops up here when all the major fighting is taking place over here, right? Hundreds of miles away. Ukraine doesn't want troops up here. So it seems a little bullshitty to me, to be honest. But I think my guess is that's why the Belarusians are making this nuclear threat. They're afraid, they've read the same rumors about Ukraine putting troops near their border. Looking here, let me see real quick. I'll skip that story. Important, but not important enough. Turkey, Romania, Bulgaria will start a Black Sea demining operation to help Ukrainian exports. That's the waterway right south of Ukraine that the Russians have mined a lot. This story is a little creepy and worth keeping an eye on. By the way, any Ukrainians out there, you need to really keep an eye on this story. A national prayer breakfast was held in Kyiv over the weekend. See, now, this is one of these stories that's going to sound nice if you're religious until I tell you what's actually going on, and then you're going to be very creeped out. A national prayer breakfast held in Kyiv over the weekend. A similar event is held every year in Washington, D.C. The event was attended by 836 people from 15 countries, including representatives of 12 religious denominations, Zelensky's office said. Participants were addressed by the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, and former Vice President Mike Pence. Well, the similar event that's held in Washington, D.C. is put on by a group of crazy people called the Family. I should say crazy. Creepy people called the Family. It is this weird group of evangelical right-wing nut jobs that put on the prayer breakfast here. It is not a normal get-together. It's an extreme fringe religious right. And I mean, even for them, it's Google the Family and the prayer breakfast. It is creepy as hell who these guys are. It is creepy as our prayer. And again, our prayer breakfast, it's like, it's a prayer breakfast. People get together and have waffles and pray. Isn't it nice? I'm extremely concerned reading that Ukraine is having one of these. I understand why Ukraine wants to have one of these because they're sucking up to the crazies, and they've got to suck up to the crazies because Russia has been sucking up to these crazies for years. Russia has been, making big inroads. One of the ways Russia made big inroads with Republicans was basically hating all the same people the Republicans hate. So they go after gays, they go after women, Jews. I mean, you name it. I mean, Republicans pretend they don't go after these guys, but they really do. But particularly gays and others. The cultural issues, abortion, and the Russians made big inroads with the Republicans by going after all these culture issues. And I think the Ukrainians are trying to kind of do it back. It still creeps me out, though. It really creeps me out. So anyway, this was a very bad story. A British volunteer medic reportedly involved in saving more than 200 lives on the front line in Ukraine has died. Peter Fuchs was born in South Africa, traveled to Ukraine in 2022, where he helped to build a field hospital and then later served in the Territorial Defense Forces of Ukraine. He co-founded Project Constantine, a Ukrainian charity supporting frontline Ukrainian troops. The charity said Mr. Fuchs was actively involved in saving more than 200 wounded Ukrainian soldiers and bringing aid to people in affected towns and cities. Finally, and this is another weird story, and we'll go on with this. Oh, I forgot to mention that, 6 Evo. Good question. I'll get to that in a second. I totally forgot. I had it on my list and didn't put it in my notes today. So thank you for bringing it up. Russian state media claims that Kanye West is in Moscow. Kanye, who goes by Ye now, whatever, is in the Russian capital on a private visit and even tweeted or put something out on social media going like, "Hi, Moscow." Who knows? I mean, it's not good. He's powerful. He's got money. And if he's sucking up to the Russians, it's not good. I agree they can keep him, but it's still not good. I will say it'd be interesting if the Russians decide to kidnap him. Also, he's an idiot too. I mean, to go there with everything going on with Russia kidnapping Americans left and right, going there, you'd have to be kind of an idiot to go there, but whatever. So 6 Evo had a question, a super chat question. Thank you, about the military security increase. So there was a security increase or threat level increase at U.S. military bases in Europe. I don't know that we know much about it yet at this point. I just sort of saw the story before coming on the show. I will say my suspicion is that this is Middle Eastern terror. Somebody asked about Russians. I don't think this is Russia. I think this is Middle Eastern terror. This is Iran. This is Al Qaeda potentially remains of ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, all the crazies. I mean, all the Palestinian terrorist groups, other terrorist groups like the Iranians. But it's Middle East. Yeah, like Mustard saying the same thing. Yeah, I'm convinced it's Middle East. What it means, God only knows. I will say this. Just last week, actually for the last several months, the head of the FBI has been saying, which is our sort of, I don't even know how to call the FBI. I guess it's the federal police investigators, maybe is a way of calling the federal investigators for police. Like at the federal level, not the state level. The FBI director has been saying that the threat level has been off the charts, like he's never seen before, like how many threats he's seeing. Thank you, Russell. And there was another repetition of that statement maybe about 2 weeks ago. It might have been the FBI director, but it was somebody of equal caliber saying that they're seeing an unprecedented number of threats against the U.S. worldwide from terrorism. So that's got to be it. But I mean, who knows? You know, thank you, Russell, for the gift. Thank you, Stephen. Multiple gifts from Stephen. Well, that's interesting. Daniel says, I read that an American nuke sub surfaced in the Norwegian Sea to give Putin a message. Don't know. Funny, though. I mean, why not? But I don't know. I mean, I didn't hear anything about it. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Francis. All right, guys. Let's hang out. This is the part we hang out and we chat. I went through the news already. I don't have any auction items to show you. I literally today packed up all the auction items. So they're going to get the auctions from the last 2 weeks. They will be sent out tomorrow. And tomorrow I'll get the new auction items ready. We've got the final installment of candy that Vlad got in Ukraine that I had not packed up yet. So that's going to go. I'm looking. Is it even here? Yep. It's sitting here. I think I put it out of the way. I put it out of the way so it wouldn't get melted. That was it. Yeah. I didn't want it sitting on the table where the sun would hit it. Anyway. So yes, this is the part we talk. Anyway, welcome everybody. If you're new to the show, this is the part of the show show starts with me talking about Ukraine, other American news, like we're talking about the elections, we're talking about Trump's immunity stuff with the Supreme Court. And then the second half of the show, we hang out and we talk. Take your questions. I get to actually read the comments, which is good. Anyway. Oh, I'm tired because my dog woke me up again a lot last night. The Bolivian coup, God knows. I don't know anything else about it. I mean, Rookinator's asking. I mean, there was like a weird general trying to take over the government last week, and like 45 minutes or an hour or two later, it ended. And it was like, okay. And then he got fired and replaced. So I don't know what the hell. Do I believe Biden will lose the election? I believe Biden can lose the election. You know, the thing is that it's going to be very interesting. Biden has had very bad luck. He is older than dirt. I mean, he is. I've always admitted that, right? I'm not going to lie about it. But he also gets a lot of bad press that isn't deserved. The Republicans have convinced, and I would say the media have convinced the American people that our economy is doing really badly. We have probably the best economy in the world. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Marcy. And we've got like the best economy in decades. I mean, decades, our economy. Unemployment, record lows. Job growth, ridiculous the number of jobs recently, 3 times what they expected. Gross GDP, which is the growth of the economy, great. Inflation went up a couple of years ago. Now inflation's fine, 3%, 3 point something, which is still higher than we want. We want 2%, but it's still good. But prices went up a year or two ago after COVID. They went up around the world, by the way. They went up in large part because of COVID, because Trump screwed COVID up, but also COVID. But Biden gets a bad rap on the economy because Biden's shitty at messaging, very shitty at messaging. And the media did this whole, inflation is so bad, and everybody's sort of forgetting that, inflation went too high. It's now not high anymore. And the rest of the economy rocks. And we are extremely lucky it rocks because Donald Trump ignored COVID. With Donald Trump as president right now, we would have still potentially had a horrific economy because Trump was pretending COVID didn't exist. Trump also, by the way, wants to increase inflation with massive increases on tariffs of every imported good into the country, which is an instant tax on every good coming into the country. That tax is basically a tax on you, the consumer. So each good would increase 15% or 20%, 25% in price. So nonetheless, Democrats don't say stuff like that. Biden doesn't say stuff like that. So Biden has got 2 problems. 1, he's older than dirt, and it shows. 2, he sucks at messaging. And we've said this on Ukraine all the time. He sucks at messaging. I don't know what it is with this guy. Even when he wasn't as old, he just is shitty at messaging. The Republicans are good messengers. They lie a lot. I mean, Trump lies nonstop, but he's good at messaging, right? So, no, Biden could lose. The other thing is that, let's face it, and I've been thinking more about this. I watched the debate last night. Biden freaked me out. He was awful. But even me, I was thinking about that. Like CNN today, what was the quote from CNN? I'm going to pull this up. 1 second, we pull up on Twitter. Jake Tapper on CNN, who was one of the moderators for the debate. And, you know, I know Jake professionally. I think he did a shitty job. But let me tell you this really quick as far as the quote from Jake today. 1 second here. Jake says today, Biden's debate performance was a shocking spectacle. A shocking spectacle. Okay. What was Donald Trump's debate performance? We had a man who's a fascist who tried to violently overthrow the government, who is a convicted felon, who convicted 85 or committed allegedly 85 felonies in total, right? Tried to violently overthrow the government, tried to steal an election, stole classified information, and then obstructed justice trying to hide it. Stooped a porn star right after his wife gave birth, and then paid the porn star $130,000 so his wife won't even be seen in public with him anymore. Is that not a shocking spectacle? I mean, I kind of feel like we're in 1933 Germany, and you know, whoever might have been chancellor other than Hitler in 1933, everyone's going, that other guy, he's really bad. Actually, that kind of is what happened to some degree, right? With the far left being so like ostracized or whatever, at least from what I know. But that everyone's so focused on how bad Hitler's opponent is that nobody's talking about Hitler. Now, Trump is not Hitler. Trump is not Hitler. Trump is a wannabe fascist in the Mussolini variety. So is this 1933 Germany? Maybe. Yeah, maybe, right? But we're talking about a wannabe European fascist is not shocking, but the guy running against him might be kind of shitty is absolutely shocking. But think about it though, really. I mean, looking back in history, if somebody were to look at like a debate, let's pretend Hitler had a debate, but looking at, or again, people don't like Hitler because Hitler always sounds too extreme. Mussolini in Italy, right? That Mussolini's coming to power. And there's like a Mussolini opponent who's really old and kind of a nice guy, did a good job, but now he's really old. And everyone is focused on the Mussolini opponent, saying, this is shocking that Mussolini's opponent is so old. It's a shocking debacle, a shocking display that we had to watch an hour and a half of Mussolini's opponent. Can Italy afford Mussolini's opponent? And no one's going, can Italy afford Mussolini? Why are we not talking nonstop about the fact that a guy who tried to violently overthrow our government is running for president, okay? A convicted felon is running for president. A guy who killed millions of Americans by ignoring COVID and lying about it is running for president. That is a shocking debacle. I mean, this is how democracies perish. This is how, you know, quote Star Wars, right? How democracies die. I mean, not just with applause, but I think with fake outrage, not fake outrage, because this is the thing. I'm not going to excuse Biden. Biden's too old. He did horribly. I was shocked by Biden's debate performance. But even for me, I walked away more shocked at Biden's debate performance than the fact that he was debating Mussolini. You know, that he was debating a convicted felon. We have a guy who could win the presidency who's a convicted felon. I mean, I just like it boggles the mind. But literally, we're so used to it, and this is worthy of sort of psychological analysis. I would say political psychological analysis, right? That the body politic, the voters, the pundits, the media can look and see, you know, Mussolini coming onto the scene, and they get so used to him being a felon and immoral as hell, right? Cheating on his wife, right? She gives birth. Trying to violently overthrow the government, mind you, that we got used to Trump trying to violently overthrow the government, guys. Thank you, Francis. That now that's considered, oh, that's old news. Oh, he tried to violently overthrow the government in a coup d'etat, but that's old news. So they were going to kill the vice president. Yeah, who doesn't, right? They claimed they were going to kill the vice president and Trump helped them. Oh, well. That we're not still shocked and outraged that man was even on stage. Thank you, Tarad. You know, I really, in any case. So like I said, I'm not going to defend Biden in the sense that he's old and his debate performance was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. But we should be outraged that some felon thinks he's going to be president, and that a good half the American people think that it's okay to pick a felon who tried to violently overthrow our government and make him president again. That speaks volumes about our country. It speaks volumes about our people. It speaks volumes about the Republican Party, sadly, and MAGA that's taken over it. But it says a lot about us as human beings that I'm not very happy about, because it just worries me about the future of our country. Thank you, Lavery. That was a long answer, but interesting question. As far as whether Trump could win. Yeah, he could. And the problem is, because Biden's old and bad at this, Biden isn't fighting back. So Trump got up there on stage and lied for 90 minutes. And Biden couldn't argue like abortion. I mean, Republicans lose when you talk abortion. In our country, thank you, Depress. In our country, people support a woman's right to choose big time, like 2/3 in the polls. I mean, it's huge majority for women. Thank you, Hannah. In our country, for Biden to have a 5-minute discussion with Trump and not do well is insane. Thank you, Hannah. Trump should have lost that discussion from the second he opened his mouth, because Republicans want to ban all abortions in this country. This weekend, by the way, here's an interesting little thing. Yesterday, the guy who used to be the head of the Family Research Council, which is like, I would say arguably the top religious right group in America. Certainly they were one of the top, extreme right religious right group. And he said yesterday, he is convinced that Donald Trump will sign, if it's presented to him, Donald Trump will, because he knows Trump personally, he said, Donald Trump will sign into law a nationwide ban on all abortions, he said yesterday. This top religious right leader who says, I know Trump, if we give him a law banning all abortions, he will sign it. How are people okay with that? How are people okay with that? It just boggles my mind. Absolutely boggles my mind. You know what? And Google it. You want to know the lies, to be specific? Get off your ass, go to Google and Google the debate and go to any independent fact checker and check out the lies. Seriously. Okay, for example, Trump claimed Joe Biden invited Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine. What? No, Joe Biden never invited Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine. Trump claimed, Joe Biden, since you asked, Trump claimed, Joe Biden increased the deficit so much more than I did. Joe Biden spent so much more money than Donald Trump did. No, Trump actually increased the deficit like twice as much as Biden did. Even when you take COVID out of the picture, and by the way, COVID was such a disaster because Trump literally let COVID happen, because Trump claimed 2 weeks into COVID that it was nothing and was going away. Trump admitted he lied to the American people about COVID, but let's put that aside, okay? Let's put aside the fact that Trump helped create the COVID vaccine and then helped convince people not to take the COVID vaccine, right? Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans are the reason people don't think the COVID vaccine works and is dangerous, right? Let's put all of that aside for a minute. Trump claims that he actually spent less money than Biden did, that Biden added more to the deficit. Taking COVID out of the picture, Trump still spent more than Biden did. Trump added way more to the deficit than Biden did. So yeah, I suggest you Google and go to any independent fact checker and read the lies that Trump gave. They said Trump gave something like a lie a minute, which honestly, it was more than a lie a minute, but nonetheless, I heard today one of them say it was a lie a minute. It was non-freaking stop. And the reason is because Republicans lie about their positions, because they know their positions are like on abortion. They want to ban all abortions. The Republicans are the reason that now in 20 states in America, you cannot not get an abortion now. And again, in our country, that's shocking. Some European countries, abortion isn't as prevalent or whatever. In America, it was. Absolutely shocking, But, and again, not to mention, I'm sorry, but you're a Trump supporter and you're asking, when did Trump lie? Now, this is the stuff that I'm sure, but this is why I get on Trump's supporter's case. This isn't like you're a Nikki Haley supporter. I can deal with you supporting Nikki Haley, right? So you like somebody politically I don't agree with. I don't care. She's fine. Right? She's not my taste. She's not my politics. She's fine. But after 7 years or 8 years of this, you haven't figured out that Donald Trump is a pathological liar? Literally, you're not stupid. Honestly, even if you were stupid at this point, after 8 years, you would know Trump is a pathological liar because you've seen all the lies this guy's made. At this point, you're just, I'm trying to use nice words here to explain what you're doing. It's the I'm not going to use the word, but it's the old Churchill quote. We know what you are, madam. We're simply haggling over the price. Right. We've established what you are, madam. We're simply haggling over the price. Like, if you're making these arguments on behalf of Trump, it's a cult. You're lying. And there's no way you possibly believe the man isn't a pathological liar. I mean, because you're not that fucking stupid. I'm sorry, but you're not. Anyway. Actually, hold on a second. I've got bread I made that's sitting in the sun, and I don't want it sitting in the sun. Put a little thing on it, at least. There we go. All right. I made some bread for the week. Ugh. And as always, guys, if you like although whenever I get into a long screed like this, everybody gets quiet. If you like my screeds, you like my politics, please give gifts. I do this for free, and I do it full time, covering Ukraine, but also U.S. politics, especially this year with Trump basically potentially becoming president again. I'm going to have to be covering this. And frankly, the irony here too is, thank you, Kay, for the shirt thing. The irony is, if Trump becomes president, it will probably be great for my social media feed, because people will be freaked out and my viewership will go through the roof. Thank you, Poppy. Thank you, Lotus. Thank you, Jorge, Timothy. I don't want that to happen. But it was an issue I had, like, when I was doing my blog and everything too. Whenever the bad guys would win, it was great, like, for my readership. Thank you, Tadad. Thank you, Felicia. Thank you, Incredibly Tired. Anyway, oh my God. So very just scary. Very scary. Thank you. Who's this? Mimi Love for the jellyfish. Lovely. Oh man. Anyway. Yeah. Well, putting that aside for a minute. Now, this is again where the Trump supporters, Democrats lied about Russia. No, they didn't. Donald Trump literally invited Vladimir Putin to get involved in our election. Donald Trump's own son, Don Jr., received an email that is public record. Google it. Donald Trump Jr., Trump's son, got an email in 2016 saying the Russian government wants to help us beat Hillary Clinton. And Donald Trump's son's response was, I love it. Set up a meeting with them. Okay? This is why I say Democrats suck at messaging. Russia comes up, all you need to do is tell that story. Donald Trump's son, who was a senior guy on Trump's campaign in 2016, got a memo that said the Russian government wants to help us win this election. And Trump's son responded, I love it. Book a meeting. Google it. Google it, Google it, Google it. Trump's son's, the actual memo is in the public record. You will find the actual memo. Okay? That's all you need. Just on the Russia stuff alone. And by the way, you never hear Democrats talk about this. You never hear Democrats talk about it, right? They never talk about Trump and Russia because Trump did just like that guy did. Oh, the Trump-Russia hoax. Republicans are great at this. It's like the Turks talking about the genocide, frankly. Oh, the Armenian genocide hoax. And they say it enough, except in the Turkish case, they haven't sufficiently scared people not to mention the fact that they killed millions of Armenians. But in the MAGA Republicans case, they've scared Democrats into going, oh yeah, whenever we say Russia, they say it was a hoax. His own son colluded with the fucking Russians. Are you kidding me? This is what's imagining. Imagine Hunter Biden, who was not part of the Trump campaign. Hunter Biden was one of the senior members of the Biden campaign. Imagine Hunter Biden, Joe's son, was a senior member of the Biden campaign, and China reached out and said, hey, we're the Chinese Communist Party. We'd like to help you beat Trump. And Trump's son, Hunter Biden, responds, I love it. Let's have a meeting with the Chinese Communist Party government leaders to help steal the election. I mean, imagine, right? Imagine what would happen. Because Democrats suck at this. Oh, no, not so much yet. By the way, let's get back to Ukraine, since we did have a troll saying Ukraine's getting crushed. Actually, we found out today in the Washington Post that Russia has bombed itself 38 times in the last year just with with glide bombs. Embarrassing. The Russians have also lost over 500,000 men to casualties in the last 2 years. Probably 150 to 200,000 of those might be deaths, but 500,000 Russian casualties at least. Russia's in trouble, and it's the reason why Russia has had to turn to the North Koreans, to Africans, to Sri Lankans, to Indians, to Nepalese, all of which I'm sure are very nice people. They're not exactly the people I would turn to if I was trying to put together a fighting force, but hey, I'm not a Russian dictator. But the Russians are so desperate to beat Ukraine because it's day, what did I say? 858 of a war that was supposed to take 3 days. Big bad Russia was going to beat Ukraine in 3 days. It's been 858 days. They haven't won yet, and they're in a quagmire now. The Russians and the Ukrainians are both pretty much stuck now, right? So, yeah, let's talk about how badly Ukraine's doing, because I got news for you. Russia's in real trouble. Now, Ukraine's not doing well either, though. Both countries are stuck. But these guys, I love these guys whoring for Russia, trying to put the old, like, oh, Russia's doing so well. The Russians wouldn't be kidnapping African students and forcing them to fight if they're, and Sri Lankans and Nepalese. Oh, another Nepalese guy just got killed. Big picture out today of a Nepalese guy that got killed fighting for the Russians. Nepal is really pissed off about this. Thank you, Brendy. Appreciate that. Do I think Russia will win? Russia can win. Russia can win. I mean, we've made it clear we're not willing to help Ukraine win. We're willing to help Ukraine tie. And that's what we've created as a tie. And I mean, this is where I fault Biden for this. Biden never wanted Ukraine to win. I mean, Trump wanted Russia to win, so that would have been worse. Thank you, Mimi, for the gift and great look. But Biden wanted a tie. He didn't want to piss off Putin, and we got a tie. Well, now I fear it's too late to help Ukraine. Also, we've given Ukraine what we could, what we were willing to. I don't see us giving Ukraine more now, right? I mean, we're going to give them F-16s, but I feel like we've peaked in terms of our big push for how much we can help Ukraine, because we peaked too low, because we didn't want Ukraine to win, so we didn't give them enough. So I worry now as to how we could have Ukraine win. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Flower Lady. And I worry that, Trump becomes president and Trump just cuts off aid to Ukraine. Trump doesn't care. I mean, Trump wants Russia to win. Trump supports our enemies. He always supports our enemies. He doesn't want, he already invited Putin to invade Europe. Trump wants Putin to win in Europe. They probably promised him a hotel or something because he's corrupt. I mean, that's. Well, Ukraine's getting damaged, Fat Boar, but guess what? That's what happens when a genocidal dictator invades your country. You get destroyed, and then you fight back, and you cause 500,000 Russian casualties, which the Ukrainians did, God bless them. And let's not forget the 38 attacks that Russia committed against its own cities using glide bombs. Embarrassing. I did get batteries. I've now got like 40 new batteries, so that's enough for... is it 15, 14? I think it's about 13 to 14 refills on the goat. So we got the goat for another 5 years worth of batteries from Amazon, I think. So we're good. It probably is too late to replace Biden. Yes, probably is. There's a process, but part of the problem becomes being an incumbent is helpful. You lose the incumbency if it's a new person. Who's going to replace him? The obvious person is Kamala Harris, who's the number 2 under Biden. A lot of people don't like her. I mean, you've got, and again, it's not nice to talk about, but this is politics. Can a black woman win the presidency? I don't know, but that's one thing. Now, Pete Buttigieg is another issue. Can a gay guy win the presidency? I don't know. I think it's a fair question to ask. It's at least fair to ask. I like Pete, but is America ready? I don't know. But if Kamala Harris, the vice president, isn't the person we pick in lieu of Biden, all hell breaks loose in the Democratic Party. Because then who do you pick? Like, she's the obvious one because she's the vice president. Even people who want somebody else, it's hard to argue against her because she's the vice president, right? But what do you do with Kamala? What do you do about Kamala Harris, right? If she doesn't get it, then A, you piss off blacks. B, you piss off women. C, you who do you pick? Then Gavin Newsom from California, maybe, but Elizabeth Warren gets pissed off. Bernie Sanders gets pissed off. Maybe Pete gets pissed off. Elizabeth, right? I mean, all these other candidates who did really well get pissed off because Newsom didn't even run. So you run the risk of like sort of crazy sort of politics in the Democratic Party, So that is the risk of replacing Biden now. Is having everybody just get like, sort of a civil war. So. I don't know. Reliable polling data post-debate. I don't know. There were like focus groups that show that they weren't really thrilled with Trump. There should be already, but I'm trying to see. let me see here. Polling post debate. It's a good question. I've not seen anything here. Well, CNN, let's see. Let's see. I mean, the problem is you got to look at all of the polls. Now, CNN is a broadcast, so I can't look at that right now. I thought it was going to be an article. Let me see here. I mean, okay, post-debate increasing numbers of voters think Biden shouldn't be running. Sure, but that doesn't surprise me. But who do you support? I know what I was going to say. This was one of those things I was going to get earlier. Even if you look at that debate and you say Biden was terrible, which he was, you're really going to go, well, Biden's too old, so I'm going to pick the fascist who tried to violently overthrow the government, who's a convicted felon, who rapes women. I mean, guess what? I'm going to take the old guy, because if the old guy has to step down, somebody else will replace him, and she's fine. She's better than a fascist who's a convicted felon who tried to violently overthrow the government, right? I mean, so in the end, you get into an interesting question of even if you took Biden's debate experience being the worst possible of how the public perceived it, are they going to really vote for Trump? Going to vote for Trump? Really? You know, I mean, and as we talked about, Democrats aren't voting for Trump. Democrats aren't voting for RFK Jr., right? I mean, our Republican Trump supporters are part of a cult. They're not gonna change their views. So you're going after people in the middle. People in the middle, I'm sure, will not thrilled about Biden's performance, but Trump's a felon. I mean, he's a felon, convicted of sexual assault, who tried to violently overthrow the government. I just don't. I don't see, right? Like the comparison. One guy's too old, and the other guy's a felon convicted of felon convicted of sexual assault who tried to violently overthrow the government. I just like, how are those equal? You'd say it sucks. I got to vote for the old guy. Yes. But of course I'm voting for him versus the felon. Right. I mean, so that's where it gets interesting. That's where it gets interesting as far as how would people vote in the end. It may not change the vote much at all. Now you get into enthusiasm issues, which are very important in elections. Enthusiasm is basically how enthusiastic are your supporters about voting? Well, here's the thing. Democrats weren't necessarily thrilled about Biden last time either, right? Biden was okay. Biden was supposed to be this. Keep in mind, Biden was supposed to be the sane guy. He was supposed to be the guy that wasn't crazy like Trump. And that's what he was. He was sane and boring, right? Well, I'm quite enthused about this election because I don't want to lose my democracy to a felon who raped a woman and tried to violently overthrow the government. So I'm enthused enough, right? You don't have to like Biden to be in the Supreme Court today. Our laws are screwed in this country because Donald Trump and the Republicans picked the Supreme Court justices, right? If Democrats don't take back, the White House again, it's going to be a disaster in terms of the Supreme Court and everything else. So I get very enthusiastic anyway about just how bad Trump is, and I think a lot of voters feel the same way. So I'm not saying this in a Pollyanna way too, because Biden could still absolutely lose, but I think you're still dealing with those people that hate Donald Trump, meaning in the middle, who hate Donald Trump, didn't vote for him last time, and they really don't like Biden. But when push comes to shove, is Biden better than Trump? Of course he is, especially if you're a voter, if you're not a MAGA cultish, right? Or cultist, of course Biden's better than Trump. I mean, he's bad in many ways, but of course he's better than Trump. There's just no difference, I mean, honestly, my dog would be better than Donald Trump. If you had my dog surrounded by a bunch of people who could help her, who would make decisions for her, she'd be much better than Donald Trump. You kidding? I mean, versus a fascist, a convicted felon who raped a woman and tried to violently overthrow the government. Of course. So, I mean, somebody wrote a man with dementia. Yeah, a man with dementia would be better than a convicted felon who tried to violently overthrow the government who raped a woman. Yes, absolutely. By the way, Donald Trump had dementia. He had Alzheimer's. Not Donald Trump, I'm sorry. Ronald Reagan had dementia. He had Alzheimer's. So I don't see a lot of Republicans saying Ronald Reagan should have been president back in the 1980s, right? But yeah, I mean, this is where, again, Democrats need to say the truth. First of all, there's no reason to believe Biden has dementia at all. But even if he did, somebody with dementia would be so much better than Donald Trump. Are you kidding? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd rather have a caretaker government than have a convicted rapist felon who tried to violently overthrow the administration. My God, you know? Um, and my dog is not nuts, but she'd still be great. Thank you, Nick. Yes, that's my Ukraine mug that they used to have online on Amazon, and then they stopped selling them. And my sister had got me one, thank God. But it's nice because it's also just the right size. And I like it because it's got the writing on both sides. So whether you're a righty or a lefty, it shows, which is nice. RFK Jr. is horrific. RFK Jr. is crazy. Yeah, he's not a Democratic replacement. First of all, he's not a Democrat anymore. He's a Republican in many ways. He supports he doesn't just support the Republicans. He supports kind of Putin, not kind of. He supports the Russians in terms of Ukraine. He parrots Republican talking points on Ukraine and foreign policy. He's literally an anti-vaccine. He's crazy. I mean, RFK Jr. is nuts. He's anti-vaccines. He's not just skeptical of vaccines. He's literally anti-vaccines. RFK Jr. Kennedy said last summer that there isn't a single vaccine ever proven effective in America, in the world, not America, in the world. And he claimed there isn't a single vaccine proven safe. So no vaccines are safe and no vaccines are effective, according to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's cuckoo talk. That's worm ate my brain talk. The guy's out of his mind. He used to be good. He used to be a good liberal on climate stuff, on the environment. That was his claim to fame. And then he became a nut job. But I'm sorry, you're a nut job. If you think not a single vaccine has ever been effective, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. Oh, by the way, he's opposed to polio now too. Not the disease, the vaccine. Kennedy's people came out against the polio vaccine a couple months ago. Polio, guys. He wants to bring back polio. Okay? He's crazy. You're going to put in charge somebody for president who's going to bring back polio because he thinks no vaccines work? He's the guy's out of his mind. That's the problem. Oh, John, you're leaving because you're a troll. By the way, Google it as far as RFK Jr. on polio and RFK Jr. Claiming that no vaccines work. Google it. We did a whole half-hour show about this, by the way. Our regulars will remember. I pulled up Annenberg School. Google Annenberg School, totally independent fact checker, not associated with anybody in the media, so there's no bias either way. And I read half an hour of their analysis of RFK Jr. lying about vaccines. Went through the whole thing. Yeah. But as I said, a couple months ago, they came out against the polio vaccine. Google it. By the way, the people who say liar are Russians, a lot of them, but a lot of them are also just MAGA Republicans because, again, as I've told you, what really worries me about Trump winning in the MAGA crowd is they've elevated lying to such a level that people can no longer believe anything. They can no longer believe in their government. They can't believe in their leaders. They can't believe in scientists. They can't believe in experts. And it, frankly, is a precursor to violence, as far as I'm concerned. You've convinced people that the only thing they should believe are demagogues, are fascists, and it's pretty screwed up. So that's why I jump on people when they pull their lying crap, because feel free to Google it and you'll find all about RFK Jr.'s wacky comments about vaccines. He's crazy. He's absolutely out of his mind crazies. Would Americans vote for a woman for president? I don't know, Bash. I mean, arguably they did. Thank you, Luis, for the gift. I mean, they voted. Hillary Clinton won in 2016 as far as she won the popular vote. Even with Trump inviting the Russians in and the Russians getting way involved in the election, Julian Assange personally weighing in for Donald Trump. Everything Julian Assange and WikiLeaks did was to make Hillary lose, he admitted. That was revealed. Trump inviting the Russians in, the Russians actually agreeing to come in and coming in with WikiLeaks. Then we had Comey, the FBI head, who basically broke the FBI rules by going after Hillary like a week before the election. And then like a couple of days before the election, does another press conference and goes, oh, she's innocent. Sorry. Literally 10 days before the election, we're opening up the investigation of Hillary Clinton. And everyone's going, oh my God, she's under investigation by the FBI. Her poll numbers drop. A couple of days before the election, oh, nothing to see. It's okay. So in spite of all of that, Hillary got 3 million more votes than Donald Trump. So America was willing to vote for a woman for president. Yeah. I mean, you still got the issue of, are Americans less likely to vote for a woman than a man? Probably, sadly, but we're kind of screwed up. A lot of the European countries have had women already. Not all of them. France hasn't. Of the major European countries, right? Of the major countries, you've got Italy, You don't have France. You've got the UK. You've got Germany. I'm taking like the biggest economies. You got Germany, woman, Canada. Canada, remind me, Canada, the UK, well, the UK's had a couple. Canada had like a bad one for 6 months, didn't they? Who then left, I think, which was kind of sad. Didn't you have a bad one? But still a woman. Sweden, although Sweden, you start to get into other countries. I guess I was sticking with the Mexico. That's interesting too with Mexico. Yeah. That's true. Mexico. Well, Mexico gets interesting because you get Latin America. Latin America has had a number of women leaders, which is interesting. I mean, leaders meaning heads of country, heads of state, which is interesting because, sorry, if you're thinking of countries that might be prejudiced against women, you might think Latin American countries might be more macho, right? In fact, Argentina, Mexico, I'm sure we've got I can't even remember all the other ones, but I'm sure we've got a number of the rest of the Latin American countries that have had women leaders. What other Latin American countries? Does anybody know offhand other Latin American countries that have had women leaders? I mean, leaders meaning like heads of state or, head of party kind of, you know what I mean? Not just a minister. But Europe's had a ton of them. Ireland was years ago. My God, Ireland was like the 1990s, wasn't it? In with a woman there. Mary Robinson, maybe? Was that her name? She was a big deal, a very strong woman, as I recall. Australia. Eva Peron. Actually, that's a good point, too. In many ways, Eva Peron, although Eva wasn't the leader, but still Eva was very powerful. Peron's wife, the other Peron woman, the second Peron, what was her name? Was she not leader at some point briefly? I always forget that. The other Peron wife. Remember the way after Eva. I'm forgetting her name now. Aussies. Yeah. My take on illegal immigrants. I'm not a fan. We've talked about that. I don't think anybody should be coming to this country illegally. I'm not a fan. Beep, 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 beep. No, Eva wasn't, but there's another Peron's wife who was the second wife. I thought she rose to power in Argentina at some point, but I'm forgetting her name. The Peron wife, 60s, 70s, maybe. Was that it? I'm not a fan of MAGA. I'm better with Republicans. I used to be a Republican. No, not Evita. I said the one that was on later. Peron's wife, decades later. After Evita. Evita died early on. What else we got, guys? 7:15. We'll go a little bit longer, not too much longer, since I have I made my fish again. So I had some tomatoes that needed to be cooked. So I hear you, dog. I hear you. What was her? Hold on a second. I'm going to pull up her wife. This is annoying me. Isabel. Thank you. Isabel. Thank you. Yeah. I was saying, like, why is nobody telling me who the hell the other Peron wife was? It was like the 60s and 70s. Yeah. Now she was president. Thank you. She was president from 74 to 76. Thank you. Yeah. I am proven correct here. Yep. Isabel Peron, who was head of Argentina back in the early 1970s, which is amazing. You think early 1970s, president of Argentina? That's insane. Imagine, America, we still haven't had a woman president, let alone in the 1970s. It's 50 years. It's embarrassing. Britain got it in the 1980s, which is still embarrassing. It's 40 years ago. That we haven't caught up is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Well, I don't know if we don't need a woman leader, go for yourself, but we shouldn't be opposed to women leaders is the problem. Not having a woman leader this late in the game kind of looks like we're bigots about having a woman as a leader, because clearly there's women who are qualified. Golda Meir in Israel, my God, Golda Meir, you're going back. Was she the first prime minister in 1948 or something, or early 50s, right? She would be way back at the beginning. It says something that it says something we only had white guys, a little weird, but that we've only had especially men and not women. Come on. Women are we know women are qualified. And if you don't think women are qualified, then that proves my point. India, right? India had Gandhi Indira years ago as well. Yeah, it's a little weird. we did have a black guy. It was a big deal too. No, Obama getting elected president was a huge deal, I think, in terms of the impact. But having a black man elected president, huge deal. And shocking that America did it twice. That one surprised me. That one surprised me. So maybe. Oh, I said white men? Okay. Yeah, I didn't mean white men, but we only had men. Yeah. No, the Obama thing shocked me. Yeah, twice. Seriously, like that was damn good. That was good. My rhino, you're helping me get past this depressive day. then my work is done. Something bad might happen at the Olympics. The Russians are trying. The Russians have been trying to disrupt the French Olympics in Paris this summer. So I wouldn't be surprised. Men in the Middle East won't respect a woman president. Well, guess what? She's going to have nuclear weapons and the U.S. or Air Force behind her and the Marines. So men in the Middle East can suck it up if they can't handle a woman president because her bombs are bigger than their bombs. So, and they're going to want her money and they're going to want her weapons. So I think men in the Middle East are going to be just fine with an American woman as president as soon as she controls the purse strings and she controls the weapons, Yeah, the Middle East is terrible on gay stuff as well. It is horrific on gay stuff. Israel's much better. Israel isn't perfect, but Israel's leaps and bounds ahead of all the other Middle Eastern countries on gay and trans issues. Huge. Let alone pride. Don't see a lot of, well, I'm sure it happens in the Middle East, but you don't exactly see pride festivals like they do in Israel, but the popular support is much higher as well. But you've got the crazy right-wing contingent in Israel, the crazy religious contingent that's growing, which is a problem. There was a recent article that I was reading. It was very interesting on sort of the lawsuits that are going on with, I think they just lost some, that the sort of religious right, different than our religious right, because they're Orthodox Jews in Israel, but the religious right is now like 10% of the country or something. And they're exempt from military service. And finally, some court decisions and everything have turned that around and said, this is Israel. We've always faced an existential threat, and we do even more now. You're going to fight in the military like everybody else. And they were getting subsidized for it as well. Thank you, Nick, for the flowers. So that's a whole interesting issue going on in Israel. There was a really big article maybe a week ago about this, maybe New York Times. I don't know. It was interesting. I don't know, Rookinator. I have no idea. I think it's fair to say Biden likely prevented all-out war with Israel and Iran. Who knows? I don't know. You want to come in, or are you just going to sit there and look at me? Come on. At least he's not eating sticks. That's always a good thing. That's a good thing. I'm sure Biden's done what the American presidents do not want, most American presidents do not want Iran and Israel going to war just because it could easily turn into something. It could easily turn into a global war, right? The Russians come in to help the Iranians. Mind you, the Russians can't afford to help the Iranians, but they may not have a choice, right? It just becomes a mess. So I'm sure Biden has been lobbying significantly so that Israel doesn't attack Iran, but who knows what Israel might have been planning. Who knows what Biden's success was? I mean, who knows? I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. Why can't we get more judges? Because you need to be president to appoint federal judges and Supreme Court judges. And the Republicans stole several of them, by the way. They stole a Supreme Court seat when Biden was president. They literally stole a Supreme Court seat, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when Biden was president. Scalia, actually, not Bader Ginsburg, excuse me, not Bader Ginsburg, Scalia's seat. Ginsburg screwed it up herself. But Scalia died during Obama's last year, and the Republicans just for a year refused to fill a Supreme Court seat, which is totally illegal, but nothing you can do about it. Think adventures, because it's what Republicans do, and Democrats just go, oh. And Democrats let them do it. Oh, we'll get Hillary as president, and we'll get that seat back. Yeah, thanks. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's another one. Seriously, there's a huge asterisk next to her name. Staying in too long, and that seat goes to a Republican. Disaster what that woman did. Absolutely. Horrific what she did, staying in that seat. Thank you, adventures. Just horrific. And that's not talked about enough, because honestly, it should be talked about, because you know what? You put pressure on other justices to not be a Ginsburg, to not have a legacy of fighting for so many people over decades, and to have that legacy totally unraveled because your ego wouldn't let you step down when you were 80, however the F years old she was. I mean, she was older than dirt and she didn't step down. And guess what? Her seat went to somebody else who now is overturning everything she believed in and fought for. Congratulations. No, she deserves major scorn for that. But at least have it be a dirty mark on her record. At least perhaps tell some of the other justices to not be as stupid. It's just ridiculous. It was. I don't know what the hell she was thinking. I really don't. I don't know. Anyway, guys, all right, let me do a quick summary of the news and then we'll call it quits. All right, we're slowing down here. All right, these are the stories we covered today. Then I'm going to go put on some rice and make some and eat my fish. Today is day 858 of Putin's special 3-day military operation. The Supreme Court ruled today pretty much in favor of Trump with regards to immunity from prosecution. It's not cute, Workinator. It's complicated. It's long, but today was considered a big victory for Trump in terms of him being prosecuted. In France, the French elections yesterday, the far right won French parliamentary elections yesterday, but it was stage 1 of 2. There's 2 elections in a row. Next week is the next stage of the election, so we've got to wait and see. But not good news. Ukraine security forces claim they thwarted a coup plot that was supposed to take place yesterday in Ukraine. Of course, Russian-backed. What a surprise. Turkey, Romania, Bulgaria have started demining the Black Sea for Ukraine, getting rid of Russian mines. A national prayer breakfast held in Kyiv over the weekend was seemingly tied to a really creepy national prayer breakfast that occurs in America and involves a really creepy religious right group that the Ukrainians should not be in bed with. Belarus's chief of staff threatened to nuke anybody that threatens Belarus, which is really cute because Belarus doesn't have any nuclear weapons. So other than Russian weapons, and they don't have the right to use Russian weapons. So kind of interesting that he thought he was actually threatening somebody. Washington Post did a big expose on a new Russian, basically military document leaked that shows the Russians bombed their own cities 38 times in the last year by accident. Oops. Sky News. This is a story I meant to get into, but it didn't have time. Russia has been asked to stop interfering with European satellite systems, which control air traffic control, among others, by the United Nations. A British volunteer medic named Peter Fuchs died in Ukraine after saving more than 200 lives on the front line. Russian state media outlets claim that American rapper Kanye West is visiting Moscow, and God only knows what he's doing because, woo, that boy's got some issues. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. I will be back tomorrow. You know how the show works. We do this every Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, U.S. My name is John Aravosis. I feel like Mrs. Maple or not Mrs. Maple, Mrs. Oh my God, I'm already forgetting the name. I always love that show, the Marvelous Mrs. Was it Maple? No, Marvelous Mrs. What the hell was her last name? It's a great Maisel. There you go. Maisel, not Marple. That's cute. Maisel. I always feel like, and I'm Mrs. Maisel. What a great, I think it's on Amazon. Wonderful series, about 5 years, or five seasons of it. A wonderful, little bit saucy to watch in front of your mom. Thank you, Red. Thank you, User336. But it's just a wonderfully funny, well-written, well-acted comedy series. Just brilliant. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. All right, guys. And it's also an interesting period piece of New York City in like the 1950s. It's just a neat, and then it kind of goes later in years, but it's very cool. All right. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. 6 o'clock Eastern Time, US. That's Washington, D.C., New York City time. Thank you, Super Hornet. And I don't know if I'm online on the 4th or not. I'm going to decide, Marie. I haven't decided yet. Maybe. Actually, I think the 4th, which is our Independence Day, is Thursday. I will probably not be online because my dog freaks out at the fireworks. So usually I don't do the show that day. I kind of want the TV on for noise and that kind of stuff. So my guess is I probably won't do the show that day just because I'm a little nervous about the dog. So anyway, all right, guys. All right, YouTubers. I will see you guys, TikTokers. I'll do my usual waiting half a minute for the show to catch up because I know it's delayed a little bit. We could probably do a Discord hangout on the 4th. That's not a bad idea, actually. And we could maybe do it earlier in the day. That's a really good idea, actually. Maybe do one like noon or something. So like before fireworks and everything else. That's a good idea. Let's remind me tomorrow, but that's a good idea. I think, or 1:00, something that's a little late enough for the Californians, not too late for the Europeans. It's early enough anyway if we do it earlier in the day. But that's a very good idea. Oh, I'm yawning here. All right, guys. Have a good night. Oops. All right. See y'all.